Hello everyone. Welcome to Fluent English. We're so happy you're here with us today. Whether you're listening while you're having your morning coffee, driving to work, taking a walk, or just relaxing at home, thanks for spending part of your day with us. Today we're going to make one of the most confusing parts of English feel simple and natural. If you've ever stopped in the middle of a sentence because you weren't sure whether to say who, which, that, or whose, don't worry. You're definitely not the only one.
That's right, even learners with a strong vocabulary sometimes hesitate when they're connecting ideas. These little words seem small, but they make a huge difference. The good news is that once you understand the basic patterns, you'll start noticing them everywhere. In conversations, movies, TV shows, podcasts, emails, and even social media posts.
I remember when I was helping a friend practice English. She said, "I met a woman which helped me." I understood exactly what she meant, but it sounded a little unnatural. We spent just a few minutes talking about why, who worked better there, and after that she started catching the difference on her own. That's what I love about learning grammar through real examples instead of memorizing long rules.
Exactly. Today's episode is all about using these words the way people actually speak. We won't overload you with complicated grammar terms. Instead, we'll explain everything step by step using everyday situations that you'll probably experience yourself.
By the end of this episode, you'll know when to use who for people, which for things, that for both people and things in many situations, and whose to show possession. You'll also learn some common mistakes, hear lots of natural examples, and get chances to practice along with us.
And we'd love to hear from you while you're listening. Tell us in the comments which word confuses you the most, who, which, that, or whose. Don't overthink it. Just tell us your answer and we'll be reading your comments.
If you enjoy learning English in a friendly and practical way, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to Fluent English, and share it with a friend who's learning English too. Every new episode is designed to help you sound more confident in real conversations.
Awesome. Grab a notebook if you'd like, or simply listen carefully and repeat the examples out loud. Let's start with the basics and build your confidence one step at a time.
Let's begin with the easiest question of all. What do these words actually do? Think of who, which, that, and whose as connectors. They connect extra information to a person or a thing. Instead of making two short sentences, we join them together to make one smoother sentence.
Here's a simple formula, person plus who plus verb, for example. The teacher who helped me is very kind. Instead of saying, the teacher helped me, the teacher is very kind, we join the ideas. The teacher who helped me is very kind.
Exactly. Now here's another formula. Thing plus which plus verb, for example. The phone which I bought yesterday is already broken. Again, we're connecting two ideas. I bought the phone yesterday. The phone is already broken. Now it becomes one natural sentence.
Let's look at a few more examples. The man who lives next door is a doctor. The girl who won the competition is my cousin. The waiter who served us was very friendly. The students who study every day usually improve faster. Can you hear the pattern? Every example talks about people, so we use who.
Now let's switch to things. The movie which we watched was amazing. The restaurant which opened last month is always busy. The book which you're reading looks interesting. The bag which I lost has finally been found. These examples describe objects, places, or things, so which works perfectly.
Here's something interesting. In everyday English, especially in conversations, native speakers often replace which with that. Instead of saying, the movie which we watched, many people naturally say, the movie that we watched. Both are correct in many situations.
That's why you'll hear that all the time. It's incredibly common because it's short, simple, and natural. Think about these examples. The coffee that I ordered is cold. The shoes that I bought are really comfortable. The song that we're listening to is one of my favorites. You could often replace that with which, but in casual conversation, that usually sounds more natural.
So here's a simple memory trick. People use who, things usually which or that. It's not perfect for every grammar situation, but it's an excellent place to start.
Let's make this even more practical. Imagine you're introducing your friends. This is Sarah, she works at my office. Now connect them. This is Sarah who works at my office. Or, I have a neighbor. He always smiles. I have a neighbor who always smiles. Much smoother, right?
Now let's try some everyday objects. I have a laptop, it runs very fast. I have a laptop that runs very fast. Or, we visited a cafe, it serves amazing desserts. We visited a cafe that serves amazing desserts. These are exactly the kinds of sentences you'll use in daily conversations.
Here's a question for you. Can you make a sentence using who about someone in your family? Maybe your brother, your grandmother, your best friend, or your teacher. Pause for a moment and say it out loud. Maybe something like, my sister who lives in Canada loves hiking. Or, my uncle who tells funny stories always makes us laugh. Then write your sentence in the comments. We'd love to see what you come up with.
Now let's do the same with that. Think about something in your room, maybe your computer, maybe your favorite chair, maybe your headphones. Can you describe it? For example, the headphones that I use every day have amazing sound. Or, the chair that I bought last year is still comfortable. Speaking out loud is one of the fastest ways to build confidence.
Sometimes learners wonder, can I always use that instead of who? The answer is not always. In casual conversation, you'll sometimes hear native speakers say, he's the guy that helped me. That's common in everyday speech. But in careful writing and many English classes, who is preferred when talking about people? So if you're unsure, choosing who for people is always a safe and natural choice.
Another question learners ask is, can I remove the word completely? Sometimes you can. Listen to these two sentences. The book that I bought yesterday is great. The book I bought yesterday is great. Both sound natural. But notice this one, the teacher who helped me is kind. You can't simply say, the teacher helped me is kind. That doesn't work because who is doing an important job in the sentence?
So here's another easy way to remember it. If removing the word makes the sentence confusing or incomplete, keep it. If native speakers naturally leave it out and the sentence still makes sense, that's often okay. Don't worry if that feels a little tricky right now. As you hear more examples, it'll start feeling natural.
Before we continue, here's a quick challenge. Complete these sentences aloud. The friend called me yesterday. The movie won the award. The neighbor has a big dog. The cake we baked. Did you say? The friend who called me yesterday. The movie that or which won the award. The neighbor who has a big dog. The cake that we baked. If you did, great job. You're already starting to recognize the patterns.
Keep listening, because next we're going to go beyond the basics and explore when whose shows possession, why that is sometimes the better choice than which, and how these words make your English sound much more natural in real conversations.
We've covered the foundation, who for people, which for things, and that as a very common alternative for things, and sometimes for people in casual speech. With those basics in place, you're ready to build on them in the next section.
Now that you've got the basic idea, let's add another very useful word to your English toolbox. Whose. A lot of learners think whose is difficult, but it's actually one of the easiest relative words once you understand what it does. The job of whose is simple, it shows possession. In other words, it tells us that something belongs to someone or something else.
Here's the basic formula, person or thing plus whose plus noun plus verb. Let's start with people. The woman whose car was stolen called the police. In this sentence, the car belongs to the woman. Another example. The student whose notebook is missing is looking everywhere. The notebook belongs to the student.
Let's compare two sentences. My friend has a dog. The dog is very playful. Instead of saying both sentences separately, we can connect them. My friend whose dog is very playful loves going to the park. Notice that whose connects the owner and the thing that belongs to them.
Here are a few more examples. The boy whose backpack is blue is my cousin. The doctor whose office is downtown is very popular. The teacher whose lessons are always fun inspires every student. The family whose house overlooks the lake enjoys beautiful sunsets. Can you hear how natural these sound?
Here's something that surprises many learners. Whose isn't only for people. Native speakers also use it for things, companies, animals, and even countries. For example, we visited a company whose products are sold worldwide. The city whose streets are always busy never seems to sleep. The tree whose branches touch the roof had to be trimmed. These examples might sound a little formal, but they're completely natural.
If that feels advanced, don't worry. In everyday conversations, you'll mostly use whose for people first. Once you're comfortable with that, using it for things will come naturally.
Let's practice together. I'll give you two sentences and let's connect them. I have a neighbor. His son plays professional soccer. Together they become, I have a neighbor whose son plays professional soccer. Here's another. We met a woman. Her ideas were inspiring. We met a woman whose ideas were inspiring. Simple, right?
Your turn, try finishing these aloud. I know a teacher whose. My friend whose, we visited a family whose, don't worry about making a perfect sentence. The goal is to get comfortable speaking.
And once you've made your sentence, share it in the comments. Reading and writing your own examples is one of the fastest ways to remember new grammar.
Now let's talk about something you'll notice almost immediately if you watch American TV shows or YouTube videos. Native speakers use that a lot. Sometimes learners think they should always use which because it sounds more formal. But everyday English is different. Listen to these. The jacket that I bought yesterday is warm. The pizza that we ordered arrived early. The app that everyone is using is really helpful. These sound completely natural in daily conversation.
Now compare them. The jacket which I bought yesterday, the pizza which we ordered, the app which everyone is using, they're all correct too. The difference is mostly style. In everyday conversation, that usually sounds more relaxed. In formal writing, you'll often see which more frequently.
Here's a fun experiment. The next time you watch an English movie or series, pay attention every time someone describes a person or a thing. You'll probably hear sentences like, "That's the guy who helped me. Where's the phone that I left here? She's the woman who called yesterday. This is the restaurant that everyone recommends." Once you start noticing these patterns, you'll hear them everywhere.
Exactly, language learning isn't only about studying, it's also about noticing. Every time you hear English, ask yourself, why did they use who? Why did they choose that? Could they also have said which? Those little questions train your brain without making learning feel like homework.
Let's look at a real-life conversation. Imagine two friends talking. Friend A says, "I'm looking for the book that you recommended." Friend B replies, "Oh, the one that has the blue cover?" Friend A says, "Yes, that's the one." Notice how naturally that appears. Nobody is thinking about grammar, they're just communicating.
Here's another example. You're at work. Someone asks, "Who's the manager who interviewed you?" You answer, "The manager who interviewed me was really friendly." Or maybe you're shopping. "The store that sells fresh bread is just around the corner." These are everyday conversations you'll probably have sooner or later.
Let's compare people and things side by side. People, the nurse who helped me, the athlete who won the race, the customer who asked the question. Things, the laptop that I bought, the shoes that fit perfectly, the restaurant which serves great seafood. Seeing them next to each other makes the difference much easier to remember.
Here's another useful tip. First, think about who or what you're talking about. If it's a person, your first choice is usually who. Second, if it's an object, place, idea, or animal, that is usually the easiest choice for everyday speech. Third, remember that which is also correct for things, especially if you're writing something more formal or descriptive. Don't try to memorize dozens of grammar rules. Just follow these 3 simple steps, and you'll already sound much more natural.
I love that advice because it keeps things practical. Many learners become afraid of making tiny grammar mistakes, then they stop speaking altogether. But communication comes first. If you say the phone which I bought, or the phone that I bought, everyone understands you perfectly. That's a win.
Absolutely. Confidence grows through practice, not perfection. The more you speak, the easier these choices become. Soon you'll stop translating in your head and start choosing the right word automatically.
Let's do one more quick activity before we move on. I'll describe a situation and you decide which word fits best. A man teaches your English class. The man teaches my English class is very patient. Hopefully you said who. Here's another. You found a wallet yesterday. The wallet I found yesterday is black. Most people would naturally say that, although which also works. One more. Your friend has a beautiful garden. My friend garden is full of flowers, loves gardening. The answer is whose.
Great job if you answered those correctly. Even if you missed one or two, that's completely normal. Every mistake is another chance to strengthen your English. Keep practicing, keep speaking out loud, and don't forget to leave one sentence using whose in the comments. We'd love to read your examples and see how you're improving.
So far, we've built on the basics by learning how whose shows possession, why that is so common in everyday English, and when which is still a great choice. In the next section, we'll take these words into real conversations, compare different situations, and help you sound even more natural when speaking English every day.
Let's put everything we've learned into real-life situations. Knowing the rules is helpful, but using them naturally in conversation is what really builds confidence. The more you hear these words in everyday contexts, the easier they'll become. Soon you won't have to stop and think, should I use who, which, that, or whose? You'll simply know what sounds right.
Exactly. Imagine you're meeting someone at a party. A friend wants to introduce you to another guest. They say, there's a woman who works for an international company. A few minutes later they add, she's the one whose brother is a famous chef. Notice how both words sound completely natural. Nobody is thinking about grammar, they're just sharing information.
Here's another everyday situation. You're talking about your neighborhood. I live near a park that has a beautiful lake. There's a cafe that stays open until midnight. I know a family whose house is right across from the park. These are the kinds of sentences people use every single day.
Now let's imagine you're shopping with a friend. Your friend asks, which store should we visit first? You answer, the store that sells sports equipment has a huge sale today. Then your friend says, oh, is that the store whose owner always greets customers at the door? See how naturally the conversation flows?
That's a great example because it shows how these words help connect ideas smoothly. Without them, we'd have to use several short sentences. Instead of saying, there's a store. The store sells sports equipment. We simply say, there's a store that sells sports equipment. It sounds much more natural.
Let's look at another common situation talking about work. A coworker asks, who's the new employee? You reply, the new employee who joined last week already knows everyone's name. Then someone says, she's the one whose presentation impressed the whole team. Those sentences sound friendly, professional, and completely natural.
Here's one from everyday family life. My cousin who lives in Australia is visiting next month. My aunt, whose cooking everyone loves, is making dinner tonight. The recipe that she uses has been in our family for years. You could probably imagine hearing these around a dinner table.
Now let's compare casual and slightly more formal English. Imagine you're chatting with a friend. You'd probably say, that's the movie that I told you about. Very natural. But in a more formal article you might read, that's the movie which received several international awards. Both are correct. The choice often depends on the style rather than the grammar.
That's why it's important not to panic if you hear different versions. English has flexibility. Native speakers don't all speak exactly the same way. Someone in one city might prefer that. Someone else might use which more often. The important thing is understanding both.
Here's another comparison. Casual conversation. The guy who fixed my bike was awesome. More formal. The mechanic who repaired my bicycle was extremely professional. Notice that the relative word didn't change. Only the vocabulary became more formal.
Let's do a little listening challenge. I'm going to read 4 sentences. As you listen, decide why each relative word was chosen. The student who answered first received a prize. The laptop that I bought last month still works perfectly. The artist whose paintings are famous visited our town. The museum which attracts thousands of visitors has a new exhibition. Did you notice? Person who, thing that, possession whose, thing which. That's exactly the pattern we've been practicing.
Now let's role-play a conversation you might actually have while traveling. A tourist asks, can you recommend a hotel? A local replies, I know a hotel that has fantastic service. The tourist asks, is it the hotel whose restaurant everyone talks about? The local smiles and says, yes, that's the one. Everything sounds smooth because the ideas are connected naturally.
Here's another situation. You're talking about your favorite hobbies. I joined a photography club that meets every Saturday. I met people who share the same interests. One member whose pictures are incredible teaches beginners. These are practical examples you can adapt to your own life.
One thing that makes native speakers sound fluent is that they connect information instead of speaking in lots of short sentences. Compare these. I have a friend. He speaks 5 languages. He travels every month. Now listen to this. I have a friend who speaks 5 languages and travels every month. Doesn't that sound much smoother?
It really does. Connected sentences make your English sound more confident and more natural. Here's another example. We visited a beach. The beach had clear water. The beach was quiet. Now combine them. We visited a beach that had clear water and was very quiet. Much better.
Here's a pronunciation tip. When native speakers talk quickly, they don't usually pause before who, that, or which. Listen carefully. The girl who helped me. The phone that I bought. The book which everyone recommends. Try saying each sentence as one smooth idea instead of separating every word.
That's excellent advice. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about connecting words naturally. Practice saying the whole sentence in one rhythm. The teacher who inspired me. The restaurant that serves amazing pizza. The neighbor whose dog loves everyone. Repeat each sentence 2 or 3 times. Your pronunciation will become smoother every day.
Here's another challenge for you. Finish these sentences aloud. I finally found the book, maybe you said, that I was looking for. Next one. I met someone who loves hiking. Here's another. I have a friend whose family owns a bakery. There are many possible answers, so don't worry if yours was different.
I'd love you to take this one step further. Choose one person, one place, and one object from your own life. Now make 3 sentences. One with who, one with that or which, one with whose. Write them in the comments if you'd like. It's fantastic practice, and you'll inspire other learners too.
Before we move on, here's a quick review. Use who when you're talking about people. Use that for things in most everyday conversations. Use which for things as well, especially in more formal writing or when you naturally prefer it. Use whose to show that something belongs to someone, or sometimes even to something. Once these patterns become habits, your English will sound much more fluent.
And remember, you don't have to stop every few seconds to analyze grammar. Focus on the message you're trying to share. The more conversations you have, the more automatic these choices will become. Trust the process, keep listening to real English, and keep speaking whenever you have the chance.
That's the key idea from this section. We explored how these words work in everyday conversations, compared casual and more formal usage, practiced realistic situations, and learned how connecting ideas helps your English sound smooth, clear, and natural. Up next, we'll look at some of the most common mistakes learners make with who, which, that, and whose, and more importantly, how to avoid them with confidence.
Now it's time to look at something every English learner experiences: mistakes. And honestly, that's good news. Mistakes show that you're using the language instead of just thinking about it. Mateo and I have both made plenty of language mistakes while learning other languages. So if you've ever mixed up who, which, that, or whose, you're in great company.
Absolutely. I remember trying to speak another language and accidentally using the wrong word for who. Everyone understood me, but I immediately realized something sounded off. It felt embarrassing for about 5 seconds and then we all laughed. That's how learning works. The important thing is noticing the mistake and improving little by little.
Let's start with one of the most common errors. Someone says, "The woman which helped me was very kind." Can you hear the problem? Because we're talking about a person, which isn't the natural choice here. The better sentence is, "The woman who helped me was very kind." Remember our simple rule. If you're talking about a person, who should usually be your first choice?
Let's practice a few more. Incorrect. The boy which won the race is my cousin. Correct. The boy who won the race is my cousin. Incorrect. The doctor which treated me was excellent. Correct. The doctor who treated me was excellent. If you remember one thing today, remember this: people usually go with who.
Here's another mistake that's very common. Some learners say, "I have a friend whose car is red." This sounds incomplete because who doesn't show possession. The correct sentence is, "I have a friend whose car is red." The car belongs to the friend, so we need whose. Think of whose as answering the question, whose is it? If something belongs to someone, whose is probably the word you need.
Here are a few more examples. Incorrect. The student whose notebook is missing. Correct. The student whose notebook is missing. Incorrect. The family whose house is very old. Correct. The family whose house is very old. Every time you see ownership, let whose come to your mind.
Here's mistake number 3. Using lots of short sentences instead of connecting ideas. For example, I bought a phone. The phone is very expensive. The phone has a great camera. There's nothing grammatically wrong with those sentences, but they sound repetitive. A smoother version is, I bought a phone that has a great camera and is very expensive. Connecting ideas makes your English sound more natural and more fluent.
Exactly. Here's another example. Instead of saying, I met a teacher, the teacher speaks 4 languages. Try saying, I met a teacher who speaks 4 languages. It's shorter, smoother, and much closer to how native speakers usually talk.
Here's another mistake that surprises many learners. Some people think they must always use which for things because it sounds more correct. That's not true. In everyday conversations, native speakers often prefer that. So these are both correct. The movie that we watched was exciting. The movie which we watched was exciting. If you're chatting with friends, that often sounds a little more relaxed.
Don't spend 5 minutes trying to choose between that and which during a conversation. If your sentence is clear, keep speaking. Fluency grows when you focus on communication first and tiny grammar choices second.
Here's a funny example. Imagine someone says, I have a dog who likes bones. Is that wrong? Not necessarily. People often use who for pets because they feel like members of the family. But you'll also hear, I have a dog that likes bones. Both are common in everyday English, so don't be surprised if you hear both versions.
English isn't always black and white. Sometimes there are two natural ways to say the same thing. That's why listening to real conversations is so valuable. You'll notice patterns instead of trying to memorize endless rules.
Let's play a quick correction game. I'll read a sentence and you fix it aloud. Number 1. The girl which lives next door is friendly. Did you say, the girl who lives next door is friendly? Great. Number 2. The man whose bicycle was stolen called the police. Hopefully you changed it to, the man whose bicycle was stolen called the police.
Here's another. The restaurant who serves Italian food is busy every weekend. The better answer is, the restaurant that serves Italian food is busy every weekend. Or, the restaurant which serves Italian food is busy every weekend. Both work because we're talking about a thing, not a person.
Last one. The woman who teaches English is my neighbor. That doesn't work because we're not showing possession. The correct version is, the woman who teaches English is my neighbor. See how one small word completely changes the meaning.
Here's a tip that has helped many learners. Whenever you're unsure, ask yourself 3 simple questions. First, am I talking about a person? If yes, who is usually the answer? Second, am I talking about a thing or place? If yes, that is usually the easiest choice for everyday English, which also works in many situations. Third, does something belong to someone? If yes, use whose. Those 3 questions can solve most situations you'll face.
I love how simple that is. Grammar doesn't have to feel scary. Instead of memorizing dozens of complicated rules, focus on recognizing patterns. The more books you read, the more podcasts you listen to, and the more conversations you have, the more natural these words will become. And remember, every confident English speaker once made exactly the same mistakes you're making today.
Before we move on, we'd love to hear from you. Which mistake have you made before, using which instead of who, forgetting whose, or trying to use too many short sentences? Tell us in the comments. Your answer might help another learner realize they're not alone.
Keep practicing, keep speaking out loud, and don't let small grammar mistakes stop you from having real conversations. Progress comes from using English consistently, not from waiting until every sentence feels perfect.
That's the big takeaway from this section. We corrected some of the most common mistakes, learned why they happen, and discovered simple ways to avoid them. Next, we'll finish today's lesson with a fun interactive practice where you'll choose the correct sentence, build your own examples, and put everything you've learned into action.
It's time for our final practice activity. This is where everything comes together. Don't just listen, answer each question out loud before Matteo explains it. Speaking is one of the fastest ways to turn grammar into a natural habit. Remember, there isn't any pressure. If you get something wrong, that's simply another opportunity to learn.
Exactly, let's play a game called Choose the Correct Sentence. I'll give you 2 options and you decide which one sounds more natural. Ready, here we go.
Situation number 1. You're talking about your best friend. Option A. The friend which always helps me is very kind. Option B. The friend who always helps me is very kind. Which one did you choose?
The correct answer is option B because we're talking about a person who is the natural choice. Here's another example. The neighbor who brings us cookies every holiday is wonderful. See how smoothly that sounds?
Great job. Here's situation number 2. You're talking about your favorite coffee shop. Option A. The cafe that makes fresh bread every morning is always busy. Option B. The cafe who makes fresh bread every morning is always busy. Which one sounds right?
The answer is option A. A cafe is a place, so we use that. You could also say which here, but in everyday conversation, that is usually the more common choice.
Let's make it a little more challenging. Situation number 3. You're talking about your coworker. Option A. The coworker whose desk is next to mine is very funny. Option B. The coworker whose desk is next to mine is very funny. Take a second and decide.
If you picked option A, well done. The desk belongs to the coworker, so we need whose to show possession. Here's another similar sentence. The student whose project won first place was so excited.
Ready for another one? Situation number 4. You're describing a movie. Option A. The movie that we watched last night was hilarious. Option B. The movie who we watched last night was hilarious. Which one sounds natural?
The correct answer is option A. Movies are things, not people, so that fits perfectly. You could also say which in many situations.
Here's our final challenge. Situation number 5. You're introducing someone. Option A, this is the engineer who designed our new office. Option B, this is the engineer who's designed our new office. What's your answer?
Hopefully you chose option A. We're describing what the engineer did, so we use who. If we wanted to use whose, we'd need to show possession. For example, this is the engineer whose ideas inspired the whole team. Now whose makes perfect sense because the ideas belong to the engineer.
Fantastic work. If you answered most of those correctly, you're making excellent progress. And if a few questions were difficult, don't worry. Every time you practice, your confidence grows a little more.
Let's take the practice one step further. I'll give you a word and you create your own sentence. First word, teacher, try making a sentence with who. Maybe something like, the teacher who encouraged me changed my life. Now your turn.
Next word, phone. Can you make a sentence using that? For example, the phone that I bought last month works perfectly. Or you could use which if you prefer. Now think of your own example and say it aloud.
Last one, friend. This time use whose. Maybe, my friend whose family owns a bookstore loves reading. Now create your own version. The more personal your examples are, the easier they'll be to remember.
Here's a fun challenge for after this episode. Look around the room you're in right now. Choose 5 things you can see. Describe each one using that or which. Then think about 3 people you know and describe them using who. Finally, make 2 sentences using whose. This simple exercise only takes a few minutes, but it's incredibly effective.
Another great habit is paying attention whenever you watch English videos or listen to podcasts. Every time you hear who, which, that, or whose, pause for a second and ask yourself why that word was used. Before long, you'll start recognizing the patterns automatically.
We'd also love to keep the conversation going after today's lesson. Write 1 sentence in the comments using who, 1 using that or which, and 1 using whose. Feel free to read other learners' examples too. It's a great way to learn from each other and build confidence together.
Before we finish, let's review today's 3 biggest ideas. First, use who when you're talking about people. Second, use that for things in most everyday conversations, while which is also correct and often appears in more formal writing or descriptive speech. Third, use whose to show possession, when something belongs to someone or something. Those 3 simple ideas will help you create smoother, more natural English sentences.
And remember, becoming fluent isn't about speaking perfectly every single time. It's about communicating clearly, learning from your mistakes, and practicing consistently. Every conversation you have, every book you read, and every video you watch brings you 1 step closer to speaking English with confidence. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We hope this lesson has made who, which, that, and whose feel much less confusing and a lot more practical. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with a friend who's learning English, leave your examples in the comments, and subscribe to Fluent English so you never miss a new lesson. We have many more practical English topics coming your way.
We really appreciate you being part of the Fluent English community. Keep practicing a little every day, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and celebrate every bit of progress you make. Thanks for learning with us, take care of yourselves, keep speaking English whenever you can, and see you next time.